So we're going to look at why we use a unit circle and how do we do that finding our trig ratios, because we want to be able to find sine, cosine, tangent, all of that stuff without having to set up that original triangle that we had looked at, you know, the 30, the 60, and then we would have to say, well, this is 1, this is 2, the square root of 3. This is a lot of work and a lot of tedious stuff. We want to be able to find out the sine of 30 degrees without having to draw this triangle. So we use the unit circle, and it actually does make it faster for us. So let's just back up a second and let's just say we're on a circle, just any old random circle. And I draw a triangle and I have an angle on this triangle and I want to find the sine of that angle. Well, sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So we go opposite over hypotenuse. But think about this. This triangle hits our circle. It does not happen to be a unit circle or anything, but it hits our circle at some x and y value. And so if I want to find the sine value, sine is the opposite side, which also happens to be the y value, because it goes from here to here, the y value of that point. And so sine will be the y value over whatever the hypotenuse is, which is going to be the radius of the triangle. And if I want to find the cosine of an angle, the cosine is going to be the adjacent over hypotenuse, but remember, adjacent is going to be the x value of that angle. So it's going to be the x value over the radius. So let's jump ahead to our unit circle. So our unit circle has that special property where the radius is 1, which is really nice for us. So let's say I put in a 30-degree angle here. Okay, and remember our point right there at 30 degrees, the y value, or the x value, sorry, the x value is the long one, root 3 over 2, and the y value is the short one, 1/2. So if I want to find the sine of 30 degrees, I'm going to have opposite over hypotenuse. Well, the opposite is, again, the y value, so I'm going to put 1/2 over the hypotenuse. This is the unit circle, so the hypotenuse is 1. So really, when I'm looking at the sine of 30 degrees, is all I really need to do is look at the y value, because the hypotenuse, or the hypotenuse is 1, because it's the radius, and the radius is 1 because it's a unit circle. And then if I look at the cosine of 30 degrees, it's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is that x value right there, so that's going to be root 3 over 2 over the hypotenuse, which is just 1 because that's the radius. So adjacent is just really the x value. Okay, so the sine is the y value, cosine is the x value, and I can do this everywhere. Let's say I wanted to find the cosine. Let's say I want to find the cosine of 240 degrees. Okay, so I'm looking at 60-degree reference angle. So here I am at 240 degrees. Here's my angle. Cosine, we've decided cosine is the adjacent, which was just the x value. So I have to figure out the x value right here. That's the short one. The short one is 1/2, only it's negative. So cosine is negative 1/2. Okay, over 1, which is just negative 1/2. So this makes it really, really nice to figure out sine, cosine, and tangent of any of them. Now let's talk tangent. I haven't done that yet. If we want to look at the tangent of an angle, so let's say tangent of, let's use 240 degrees since we're there. Okay, it's opposite over adjacent, right? So the opposite side is right here. That's the y value. So it's going to be the y value over the adjacent side. That's the x value. And that's going to take some time for you to really get used to where is it when I talk opposite, when I talk adjacent, which is it, x or y. And so that's going to be a visualization. So you might have to draw the circle the first few times. Okay, now let's just finish here. X is negative 1/2, y is negative root 3 over 2. And so if I look, it's the y value, so it's negative root 3 over 2 over the x value, negative 1/2. Okay, my negatives cancel. My denominators cancel, so I get basically just a square root of 3. So tangent of 240 degrees is the square root of 3. And we can do this all the way around the circle. And so this is how you're going to figure that out. So before I go, just because I know this can be confusing and sometimes you want a little bit more hand-holding, we will do some more. Let's try all 6 trig functions of, let's see, what angle should we do? Let's do 330 degrees. Okay, so I've got my unit circle. 330 degrees would be right here. It's a reference angle of 30 degrees. My x value, it's long, so that would be root 3 over 2 positive. My y value is short, that would be negative 1/2. All right, so then we go, let's see, the sine of 330 degrees. Sine is the y value, or the opposite, which is the y value, so that would be negative 1/2. Cosine of 330 degrees. Cosine is the x value, so the x value is root 3 over 2. Let's go to the reciprocals. Cosecant of 330 degrees, that's taking the negative 1/2 and flipping it over. Secant of 330 degrees is taking the fraction, flipping it over, and then I have to rationalize, so then I get 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Now for the fun part, tangent of 330 degrees, this always takes a little bit more work. I'm going to work it off to the side. Tangent is the opposite, which is the y value, over the adjacent, which is the x value. And then my denominators cancel, so I get negative 1 over root 3. I'm going to actually leave that there because that's something I want to use later. But then I have to rationalize it, so I multiply top and bottom of the square root of 3. And so then I get negative root 3 over 3. And then the reciprocal cotangent of 330 degrees, well, I'm going to take the negative 1/3 that I had, I'm going to flip that over, so I get negative root 3 over 1, which is just negative root 3. And so that's how you're going to do that every single time. You're going to identify where is it on the unit circle, what are the coordinates, and then you can find sine, cosine, and tangent just by following. Sine is the y value. Cosine is the x value. I don't know how you can remember that. That's something you're just going to have to remember. I'm sure you're going to laugh at me in class when I talk about some of the ways that I remember that. But sine is the y value, cosine is the x value. All right, good luck. Unit circle. Remember, the uniqueness of the unit circle is the radius is 1. So if I take an angle, let's say my 30-degree angle, and I want to figure out the sine of 30 degrees, I'm going to go opposite over hypotenuse, right? So the opposite over the hypotenuse. However, remember, the opposite is the x value. So whatever the x value is going to be the opposite. And the hypotenuse is the radius. And if you look at this, the x value of sine, well, that's the short one. So the x value is, oh my goodness, did I just do all that?